Hello, my name is Sooky, and also there's supposed to be Tajasi's awesome guide to 2D animation. The 12 principles of animation. They were all developed by Disney, and all principles are meant to create an illusion of life. So squash and stretch, anticipation, staging, straight ahead, pose to pose, follow through and overlapping action, slow in and slow out, arcs, secondary action, timing, exaggeration, solid drawing, and appeal. So the first principle of animation, squash and stretch. Squash and stretch describes how an object will change shape and depending on how it moves. Squash happens when an object gets compressed and vice versa when stretch happens when it is pulled or it is going fast. So as you can see on the right, I have an image of a bouncing ball. And as the ball hits the ground, it squishes and compresses. And as it bounces up and down, it stretches to show how it's falling faster or going up fast. Same for this image. There's just normal balls, just like bouncing. While on the other side, we see the distortions, and the distortions help give the illusion of movement. Next is anticipation. Anticipation is the act of preparing an action. This would take place before a larger action. So, such as a person winding up for a jump, they would crouch down and then jump. That would be the anticipation. And another example is someone winding up a punch. So like in Popeye, he'll start winding up his punch a bunch and then go for the kill. And that's kind of what you want. You want to build suspense in your animation, and that kind of stuff hypes up a person and makes someone excited for what's happening next in your animation. Think about Dragon Ball, something like that. Next is staging. Staging is making a scene or shot look as clear as possible. You want to be able to tell what you are portraying in any scene. You can also make it purposely intangible. It depends on what you're going for. Do what you feel is best for the scene, Pookie. So here's just an example of just like a quick staging. I have a character in the center and I have something in the foreground. And you can see like the background. Another good way to show staging is you have a main character here. You have the problem, which is the obstacle, the gap in the ice. Then we have our goal and objective. We see that our character is interested in it. And we also know that he is out in sea. He is out in the world. He has nowhere else to go but in this stage here. Next is straight ahead and pose to pose. This refers to the style of animating and how you animate. So straight ahead animating is animating new frames from beginning to end with no planning. You just kind of go at it. You keep going. So for straight ahead, I animated 2 scenes, one with pose to pose, one with straight ahead, and with straight ahead, I didn't have anything, I didn't know what I wanted. I knew I wanted him to jump, but I was like, I don't know, maybe he'll fly off the screen. So I just kind of animated him doing that all at once. With straight ahead, we don't really use this anymore as much in the industry. This is mostly safe for like VFX, 2D VFX, and such. But for actual animation and what goes on like the big screen and stuff, all of that is pose to pose. Animating with keyframes and then adding frames in between. So what I animated here, you'll notice that some of the frames are red. The red frames are the key poses I drew. And all the black frames are stuff that I drew in between to show basically what I wanted to do. So the red poses are there to know that like, hey, this is our final shot. This is where you want to end it. And these are the shots that are very important in between. Pose to pose is probably what you're going to be using most of the time in animation. So it's good to keep in mind. Pose to pose help keeps things very consistent and proportionate. So that's something that you don't really have with straight ahead animation. You can do it with straight ahead, but with straight ahead animation, it's very hard to unless like you have perfect drawing each time. While pose to pose just kind of has the ability to check your proportions and check it with the character sheet. Follow through and overlapping action. This refers to when an object that is in motion has some overshoot or elements moving at different times. When a person is running, the body goes forward while hair and clothes would flow behind them. So if you try moving like your body right now, you'll notice that your arm goes up, but like your clothes are kind of lagging behind you. That's kind of what you're going for. When a person comes to a stop, they will sometimes lose their balance and would lean forward to catch that balance. So here I drew my character kind of like going forward, and you'll note, and another secondary action I did for him was moving his arms all around to catch his balance. And it draws your attention to something, and it's realistic. For the top portion, we see like a dog turning its head, and we'll notice that the head and the neck is like baseline, but the nose, the ears, and the tie are moving at different times. That just kind of helps set in like, hey, these are moving a little bit more loosely than the body, and it's a bit more realism that you see in real life. Slow in and slow out. When moving, objects will accelerate and decelerate between one action and another. The process of this nowadays is called easing. And with this is like actual physics, but any object that you try to move will accelerate and decelerate. That's just kind of how it is. On the top ball, you'll notice I didn't do any easing on the top ball, and you'll notice that it's really choppy and like slow, and it feels like you're just kind of moving metal, which is not what you want to see, especially in like animation if something is fluid. So we never want to see this, essentially. Whenever you're animating, you want to see this. You want to see a bunch of frames near the ends and the beginnings, but while in the middle, it's almost very scarce. And you'll see like the difference. The bottom one is animated with this kind of technique, and you'll see how much more smoother and lifelike it feels like. That's kind of what we're going for. This is something important to know and something to utilize. Next is arcs. This principle comes from how most things when moving move in arcs. When you swing your arms, it moves in like an arc motion. Think about how things move in real life. They will generally be in like an arc motion. So as you can see, just like humans in general kind of like be in a circle. We be a circle. And when you're moving your arm around like this, it just works better if it's in like a circular motion. When you try to do something like this on this side, rather than the arc, we go to like into a square shape. It just doesn't look as well. It looks kind of, the best way to describe it is like choppy, or it feels unnatural. That's the best way to say. Whereas the arc just feels more natural and fluid. Arcs are generally important in animation. If you notice that your animation doesn't feel right, or it doesn't feel like it's looking correct, try analyzing your animation and seeing if you have an arc in that motion. And if you don't, well, that's why it looks off. Next, we have secondary action. Secondary action refers to smaller movements that support the main object. This emphasizes the action taken by the object. An example of this are the tails on like an animal. I have an animation to the right where I have a character who is a cat boy and like a dog boy, and I added tails to them. And the tails in the animation kind of like support like what they're feeling. He's very calm here. He's shocked, so his tail goes up. They're calm here, so nothing really moves, but when the dog gets excited, his tail moves around, it's that kind of stuff, On the top, we have a secondary action of the hat moving around, and while he's running, the hat is going up and then down, up and then down. It just kind of emphasizes his movements of like running, so you know that he's like running along. Next is timing. This is like one of the most important principles of animation. This is something you're going to see a lot in like the industry and such. You'll notice this is kind of similar to easing in and easing out, where you have a bunch of frames in like the end or beginning. But timing as a whole is being able to control the speed of an object and the placement of frames relative to each other. This is similar to easing in and out. To the bottom here, we'll see like different like frame timings. And while I said you don't want to see this in your frames, like it depends on what you're going for. So you'll see like maybe the action is really fast in the beginning, so you're going to see like the beginning, like this part of it, but then it slows down. That's what timing is about. Now you'll notice if you animate in like the industry, you're gonna see like this kind of graph a lot. And what these graphs do is that they help like the animator to in between kind of time out like how long the animation should go for. So we got 1/2, we got half slow in. So this is just like bam, bam. But here we're going to slow down here, that this is where the animation slows down a little, and vice versa. So same here, all the things are going to slow down here, but then speed up and then slow down again. So this kind of stuff you're going to see like on like a chart of a character, and this will help guide the animators and you and yourself if you so desire to animate with this timing to get the perfect animation shot. Exaggeration. With exaggeration, you exaggerate. That's a crazy concept. But rather than aiming for your animation to be more realistic, you want to try your best to push the limits of your expressions and movements. Push your lines of actions and facial expressions. I did say that you want your animation to be like realistic, but that's in the sense of how objects move. That just helps your animation. Now that you have those basics, you want to be able to exaggerate those feelings, because a human can't make that face. That's the beauty of animation. You can't do this stuff in real life. You can only do this stuff in animation. So go all out. Exaggerate things. That just helps you feel more emotion. So on the top, like if someone's crying, you don't want them to just like cry. That's a little bit boring, you know? If you want them to cry, make them cry, you know? Add a lot of lines, add a lot of wrinkles, make like their face bigger, you know, make their mouths extend out of like their like jaw. You want to see something like that. And like pushing the line of action as an example down here, like if you see like a character that's tired, you don't want them to have like a straight line of action. You don't want them to be, you know, just standing there tired. You want them to look tired. So you'll notice with like the line of action, it's drooping downwards. This guy is like really tired. He's like dragging his feet. He's like putting his hands in his pocket. He's like drooping his head. That guy's going to fall asleep at any moment. And that's what exaggeration is, basically. Next is solid drawing. In animation, it's important to be able to draw things with proper perspective and proportions, while also being able to do these quickly and in succession. Be sure that the focus of your animations have a good balance between volume, weight, and balance. Even in 2D, you want to give the illusion that your character is 3D. So for example, you know, like in this animation on the bottom, like the arm gets cut off, but like there's like a bunch of shapes going on, and like you can tell that this, like, even though this is a 2D drawing, like it feels 3D. It feels natural, and there's a horse head. But with all of these shapes in mind, you can animate something with the illusion of it looking and feeling 3D. That's why it's important, even in animation, to get a good sense of drawing. Like you need to be able to like capture being able to have these things in 2D animation. So just a good way to practice, just draw a bunch of shapes. Know which body parts or which shapes to find like the perfect balance, you know? It's always just something to keep in mind. A good way to like practice with this is, you know, like a leg is like made up of cylinders. If you animate a bunch of cylinders moving around, you're able to like simulate basically like, oh yeah, this shape is in 3D even though it's a 2D animation, you know? Obviously, if you're doing 3D animation, this is a non-issue, but for 2D, you want to give the illusion. That's the whole point of the principles, is to give the illusion of life. Appeal. What's the point of an animation if it doesn't appeal to you? It doesn't interest you. Your animation should have appeal so that people are interested in your animation. So, you know what? Draw your favorite baby girl in your favorite poses or something. Go wild. But on like a more like serious note, like you want your characters to be like interesting and have like a good design and such. But you know, like characters like Mickey Mouse. Like, you know, that's Mickey Mouse. We all love Mickey Mouse. He's got like 2 round ears, and like we can tell he's like, oh yeah, that's Mickey Mouse, all right. And you know, no matter what you think about Disney, but like he's like a likable character. He's a fun guy. And that's kind of just what you want to go for in animation. You want your characters and your animations to be likable. So now that I went over that, I also wanted to go over the animation pipeline. Although this isn't about animation itself, it's also just kind of important to know, especially if you want to make like your own animation. So first off, story and scripting. If you want to make, this doesn't have to be up to you, but like if you want to make your own animation and your own story, this comes first. You make a story and you start scripting. You script like the dialogue, and while it's not written here, there are some lines of just like this character is doing this at this time, and having all of this written out will help in like storyboarding. That way, so you can grab your lines and put them on like the bottom of your storyboard thumbnail, and someone else on the outside could be like, oh yeah, so this is what happens when this person says this, so on and so forth. After story and scripting, we have concept art. So concept art is basically, what's your animation going to look like? What is our background going to look like? What is our character looking for? What's the vibe we're going for? So this includes background design, character design, exploratory art, and etc. What does your character look like? What is their story? What is the history of like your backgrounds? All that kind of stuff. That's what happens in concept art. Next, after concept art, is storyboarding. Now this is one of the most important parts. This is telling your story visually, usually with thumbnails, and detailing how the scene will be shot. So this is like a storyboard from Adventure Time. We had the lines from the scripts going on down here, and we see like the dialogue, oh, what do you want, and the action of what's happening, and we see what the scene will look like. So based off of storyboarding, from here you can build your animation off of this, and this is essentially like your Bible. Like you will go back to this often, and having a storyboard helps because now you have everything planned out, all that you need. Now all you have to do is put this in like a animatic, a moving storyboard. This will highlight your animation and what it will look like. This will also help you with timing and how your animation will go. This is an example from Spider-Verse, and we see like, oh, this is what's going to happen when Miles and Gwen start swinging. This is how the animator should animate it, like, kind of thing. While of course the final animation won't exactly always look like this, but it's like a good starting point. It's a good starting point to start your animation in. And to go back really quick with storyboarding, you'll notice that these are all on like post-it notes of like corrections. That's going to happen a lot. Although this is like kind of your Bible, you're going to go back to it a lot. It's also possible it won't be the same, but this helps visualize the beginning portions. All of this is still kind of the beginning of the pipeline. But, after that, once we got most things set in place, we need assets. So this includes props, backgrounds, character sheets, and, sometimes possibly rigging if it's a puppet animation. So we have a character sheet here from Amity from the Owl House. And this is just to keep everything consistent. Like now we know like how tall she is compared to like Luz. We know her proportions, her shoulders are here. And this will just help the animators have a consistent like art style. And then, we just have like solid backgrounds where like the characters could hang out, like in Steven Universe. And another thing with character sheets, we'll see like a storyboard thumbnail here of what they're going for. And even if she's not exactly how she is, like this is just a good reference point. Next is previs, which is pre-visualization. Pre-visualization. What will the animation look like vibe-wise? This is more prevalent in 3D animation, but I have seen this happen with like 2D animated shows, where basically someone on the team will draw like what the background and like what the scene will look like in just a solid frame. There's just a single frame where like this is what the scene is going to look like, and that's what we're going for. That's what previs is. It's not always necessary if you have like your storyboard and animatic, but if you're having trouble, this will always help you visualize like, oh yeah, this is what we want in our animation, and this is the vibe we're going for. After that is just, animation. You got to animate, and we went over that, and I'll go a little bit more in depth into that. And then after animation is compositing. So compositing includes lighting, VFX, rendering, editing, color correction, etc. So we have like a bunch of poses here, but like this is like the assets. This is like what's going to be in the animation, while in the compositing, bunch of colors. We have the background together. We have color correction. We got some effects going on. That's what compositing is. You want to like polish your animation, basically. You want to make it look good. Generally in animation, you will have just like flat colors, just because like that's just how it is, especially in 2D animation. But finally doing the flat colors, like lighting and stuff, that goes to the next person. And that will make the animation look much better than just like a flat color. And after compositing, it's sound, which is just adding sounds, depending on what your animation's about. But there's not really a visual representation of that. But how do you start an animation? Well, we got all of like our story stuff down. Well, now we just need to animate it. So the first thing you can do is record or watch a reference video. Now, you don't have to do this. It's possible to just animate on your own. But using references and having references always helps you with visualization and what you want, just to keep in mind. So in the movie Puss in Boots, they have an animator acting out what Puss in Boots will do in the movie, and using that reference, they animate it in like their software. It helps, After that, we have key posing. We want our main poses to be blocked. We want our main poses to be put down. This is the main action that will happen. We have to get this down. That's what we want. So we need to have like the normal, the contact, the down, the pass, the up, the contact, so on and so forth. But once you finish with key posing, then there's blocking. These two can be interchangeable depending on what you're doing. There's a lot of depending ons here, but that's just how animation is sometimes. But in blocking, this is where you're also like kind of in betweening. Like you have your main poses, but sometimes there's like extra poses that have to go in between to make it go smoother. So blocking also will generally have like a cleaner like lining and stuff. Like that's like kind of like the final shot that you're going for. And like there's like a lot more lines going on. Like, oh yeah, this is like the whiskers, this is the mouth, so on and so forth. After blocking, we have in-betweening, which is basically filling in the gaps. That we are in-betweening from one pose to another. And we see it with this head turn, we kind of like see the transition between. Depending on how long your animation is, I'm saying that a lot, I'm sorry, but a lot of things can depend, depending what you're going for. Oh my god, I will not stop saying that. But anyway, after you in between, next comes polish and cleanup. Basically just making everything look prettier. Like maybe your animation looks really rough. You have to go back and like put line art on it and make it look nice and neat. So, sketch, final. Essentially, that's what it is. This also kind of goes hand in hand with compositing. Now some other tips and tricks, like just general tips that you can have. There's smear frames, basically a stylized way of creating motion blur, like SpongeBob here. Like he has just a bunch of frames in between. Like that doesn't look right on a normal thing, but you see it in motion, it looks great. It looks like the animation is doing fantastic. Next we have line of action. This is something I mentioned before with exaggeration, but this can also be used for like normal drawing. It helps make your character look more dynamic. With this figure here, we'll see that the line of action is like curved upwards, and the more crazy a line of action is, the more interesting, Next we have frames per second, which also known as FPS. Lower FPS can make your animation choppy like stop motion, and higher FPS can make them smoother. Most media nowadays is 24 FPS. Don't believe the 60 FPS lie. It doesn't look that good, I promise you. That being said, though, like an example of like lowering your FPS is in Spider-Verse, where Miles was actually animated on a lower FPS than everyone else because he was inexperienced, and it was good. It was a good piece of storytelling that you can also do. Who knows? Maybe your animation could have that as well. Another one is observation. You should always observe your surroundings. See how things and people move. Knowing how these things move will help greatly when you are trying to translate these things into motion. So like look around campus, see how people walk, you can like, when you study how people walk, you can like put that in your animation. And I know this shot from Jujutsu Kaisen is like really goofy, but like, oh, we can tell their characters just from this walk, you know? That is why observation is important. Another is status. If, you know, for example, let's say someone is rich. They have a high status. This can mean that they have like a proper posture. They're like standing up high. They have like their shoulders back, the chest high, looking down on you. That kind of affects how people interact with this character. So, you know, it doesn't always just have to be, oh, it's a rich guy. Like, what if that person is a shy character? So they're going to be more inward. They're going to hunch over a little bit. They're going to be more submissive. All that stuff kind of factors into status. I put Sanji and Zoro here because, you know, their statuses are kind of similar. If their statuses are similar, they might just clash with each other a lot. You never know. You never know. I just taught you how to animate, but, you know, what if you don't have an animation software? Well, I got you. Some free softwares that we have here is Flip-a-Clip for the iPad. We have Krita for computers, Fire Alpaca also for computers, and Ibis Paint for like iPads, phones, and stuff. I'll be honest though, with Ibis Paint, they recently came out with an animation function. I don't know if that's like free for everyone, but if it is, go check that out. Now, you know, we got free programs over here, you know. Very, very free. You'll notice with like Luffy, I put Luffy here for a reason. If you know One Piece, you know what I mean. I will be uploading this slide onto the SIGGRAPH Discord, so please join that if you haven't. And on there, you can find the link to this PowerPoint. Adobe Animate and Photoshop are both Adobe software that can use animation. And I put basically a hyperlink here that will take you to a very, very fun place where you can download Adobe Animate. Oh my god. I'm just saying, if there's a password or something, I don't know why they would have a password. It would be 123. Unfortunately, I don't have the other ones for something. I don't know what you're talking about, but you can also get Toon Boom, which starts at $15 per month. You can get Clip Studio Paint, which it's a one-time purchase of $50 for the Pro version, which is like 1 second of animation, and another one for $200 for the EX version. EX lets you animate forever and ever. I actually do have Clip Studio EX, and we also have Procreate Dreams. It's going to be a one-time purchase of $20, and it's coming out soon for iPad. This is specifically for iPad. Well, it could be for any mobile device, but you know, generally it's an iPad. Now here are some animation practices. I won't play the video in this video. There is like a video here, but it's by Avia Segel up here. But what this has is a lot of animation exercise to help you animate and like practice animation with the 12 principles. So we have bouncing ball animations, we got head turns, we got emotions, we have character study. We also have flower sacks, and flower sacks are also just important because with flower sacks, you can practice like all of the animation traits ever. So it's just something to get the hang of, you know? So go check out this video and like this other channel as well if you want for like more animation practices on your own. You don't have to do these, of course, but like, you know, good to get the practice in. And next we have the 2D animation contest. This is something SIGGRAPH is hosting. And here are the rules. You can have any frames per second, but you can only use 24 frames. Sound is allowed. It's also like optional. You don't have to if you don't want to, but you know, for fun. You can also submit your animation here on this hyperlink. It will take you to a Google Drive by 11:59 on October 2nd. And then once you submit everything and once we look at everything, you can come to the showcase on October 3rd, 2:30 p.m. And hopefully in lecture hall too. There is also only one submission per person. Let's keep it at that. And I'm sure no one wants to animate like 2 things, right? Right. So that is the end of my 2D animation presentation. If you have any questions, you can always leave a comment, or you can also ping me on Discord. My name is Sooky, Sooky. Ping me there, and I'll try my best to answer your question or try to help you. If you want a critique, you're always free to ping me as well, and I'll give you some critiques on like your animation and such. If you have any questions on this presentation, you can also ask on the Discord. So yeah, thank you for watching, and thank you for listening to my presentation. And if you came in person, also thank you. I hope this was this was helpful. I want to help people who are interested in 2D with 2D work in NJIT. So that'll be it. I will see you all next time.